Greetings, citizen, and welcome to the Humane Mind, a show where I play an ill-conceived superhero trying to save the world from its own stupidity, one poorly edited video at a time. And I know what you're thinking, but we've already seen your face, so you just wasted a perfectly good t-shirt making that mask. And that's where you'd be wrong. This is a sock. On this channel, I've tried to do a series of videos on Born This Way and the LGBT plus community. Judging by the title of this video, I will be talking about the T of that acronym, the trans movement. Now, the FDA in the title is not the Food and Drug Administration, because that would be ridiculous. But it could easily stand for fantasy-dwelling airheads. I wanted to use other words, but this is a family show. Family-destroying advocates. That works as well. The first point that I want to address is that it makes zero sense for the trans community to be associated with the LGB community, because the LGB community famously says that they were born that way, while the trans community says, I was born incorrectly. The LGB community claims that their behavior is innate, while the trans community claims that how they were born is not actually who they are. The LGB community says, I don't need to change, you should accept me as I am. The trans community says, I don't accept who I am, and neither should you. The trans community says, I need to change who I am, and drastically. The LGB community says, don't let anyone change who you are. These communities should be diametrically opposed, but they're not. Maybe these two communities do have one thing in common. They both seem to want to hear anything but the actual truth. Trigger warning. I'm going to be talking about some biological processes, so the next few statements may not be suitable for young children or those allergic to reality. First, men cannot get pregnant, to which the trans community would argue, oh, yes, they can. Thomas Beatty is the first pregnant man. Second point, men do not have periods, to which the trans community responds, they don't bleed, but they definitely have periods. My third point.
Boys have a penis, girls have a vagina.
Whoa, someone should teach that little kid to stop spreading hate speech. As usual, links to the articles and videos that I will be addressing are in the description below. Who is Thomas Beatty and what is the situation regarding that pregnancy? Thomas Beatty was born a woman with a set of fully functioning female genitalia. Thomas Beatty is not a man because men do not have a uterus, men do not have ovaries, and men do not have any of the other internal organs that are necessary for them to become pregnant. This individual was already in the process of having hormone replacement therapy and various surgeries to become a man when she and her partner decided that they wanted to have biological children. Yes, that's right, 2 women. Now, you may ask, well, why didn't Nancy just have the children? The reason Nancy wasn't able to carry the couple's children is that Nancy had a hysterectomy earlier in her life. So it fell on to Thomas to bear the couple's biological children. Yes, I said children. Thomas became pregnant 3 times. Now, my first question was, how is it possible for them to have biological children? And naturally, they can't. The biological children are the children of Thomas alone and an anonymous sperm donor. Nancy had no part in the reproductive cycle. They used in vitro fertilization, an anonymous sperm donated, to impregnate Thomas after Thomas had already had a mastectomy. So even though Thomas became pregnant and carried the couple's children, it was Nancy who ended up breastfeeding the children. Now, I'm not certain if hormones were used to induce lactation within Nancy, but I think it's a pretty safe presumption. Despite what the news, professors, and various medical professionals would have you believe, at no point in this procedure did either of these women perform the function of a man. The male's role in biological reproduction is to provide the sperm. Just because Thomas does not have breasts, has facial hair and masculine features, and has had various surgeries to become more masculine, that does not make this individual a man. She does not have a Y chromosome. She has to have regular injections in order to keep her more masculine appearance. If she ever stopped taking these treatments, her appearance would become more feminine over time as her body naturally produces estrogen. Now, I don't have a problem if Nancy and Thomas want to live in fantasy land where words don't matter and genetics don't matter and biology don't matter, but it does raise ethical and moral concerns that these 2 individuals would want to bring children into this situation, and that medical professionals helped in every step of the process multiple times. There are already a host of things that can go wrong in a normal pregnancy without adding massive fluctuations in hormone levels and chemical changes within the pregnant mother's body. This process was occurring in between each pregnancy as well. She didn't just stop hormone replacement altogether. She continued it in between each pregnancy. Now, I'm not a medical professional, but I can't help but fear for the physical health and well-being of these children, considering the detrimental effects less drastic chemical and biological changes have had on countless babies. So there's not only the physical side, but there's the psychological as well. When these children grow up and find out that daddy isn't really daddy, daddy is mommy. Mommy isn't really mommy. Mommy is a wet nurse. And nobody knows who our biological father is. So any instances where there could be medical complications, a history of psychosis, history of mental illnesses, a history of cancer, history of heart disease, history of heart failure, all kinds of things like that. These children will not know. These children will not know their genetic propensities for certain diseases, and they will more than likely never know who their actual biological father is. As countless adopted children have proven, there's always that desire to know their biological parents. It is hard enough to have a normal life, even coming from a traditional family, without all of this mental gymnastics that these children will be forced to endure once they become old enough to be aware of what's going on. For my second point, in November of 2015, the Daily Beast released an article titled, "Men May Not Bleed, but here's why they have periods." The article goes on to state that a quarter of British men believe they have male periods, according to a new survey reported by The Telegraph. Basically, the article was saying that men do have periods because they have mood swings and depression. Imagine two men having this conversation. "Hey, Kenny, well, you don't look so good. Is everything okay at home?" "Well, I lost my job, my wife left me and took the kids, thanks for closing on the house, my car broke down, and my dog just died." "Say no more, Kenny. You're obviously having your man period." The authors of the research that inspired this article would probably have no problem with that conversation. But by their logic, then it is possible for a woman to have her period when she is not menstruating. For them, the biological process where the female body breaks down the inner lining of the uterus and replaces it every month, that seems just like a side effect. The main point of a period is obviously for the mood swings and the depression and cramping. Another thing that these studies do not consider is that when a woman does have her period, she is physically incapable of becoming pregnant during that time. Whereas a fecund, yes, that's the word of the day, fecund, it's basically the opposite of sterile. A fecund male can have offspring year-round regardless of his mood. The last point I would like to make is that during pregnancy, a woman does not have her period. She still has hormonal imbalances, she'll still have mood swings, there's still cramping, there's other situations that happen with her body, but she does not go through the process of having her actual period. And for my third point, this is something that is becoming increasingly more common. In 2015, Glamour magazine decided to name their Woman of the Year a man with fake breasts, a Terabad facelift, and dun 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 dun, a penis. That's right, apparently you can be a woman and still have fully functioning male genitalia, because it's the current year. The amount of stupidity it takes to think that this is reality hurts my brain. P.S. There were rumors that Bruce was considering going back after regretting the transition. The fact that he kept his male genitalia adds some validity to those rumors. Speaking of brain damage, meet Riley Dennis.
And if you were to say that you're only attracted to people with vaginas or people with penises, it really feels like you're reducing people just to their genitals.
Riley Dennis is a semi-famous YouTuber who claims to be trans because he uses mascara, grew out his hair, and talks high-pitched with a lisp. He doesn't just claim to be a woman, he claims to be a lesbian that, you guessed it, has a penis. Now, I don't know how this person expects other people to take him seriously as a woman when his Adam's apple takes up half of the screen. This genius also claims that trans women aren't biologically male. In addition to that, he claims that if you would not date a trans person, it's not just because you would like to have biological children one day, it's because you're a transphobic bigot. While I'm on the topic of transphobia, there is no such thing. Not liking something is not the same as being afraid of it. Tacking phobia to the end of something to make it seem like you're a bigot is absurd. That is like saying, "Oh, you don't eat at Jack in the Box? What are you, Jack in the Box phobic?" Not only that, but a phobia is an irrational fear. Like being afraid of your own shadow is irrational because your shadow can't do anything. It is perfectly rational to be afraid of someone who refuses to accept objective reality. This is especially true as many trans people consider it assault if you don't use their preferred pronouns, and they feel it is justified to use physical violence against you for your words. This is not me being paranoid or irrational, as demonstrated when Zoe Tur placed his hand upon Ben Shapiro's back and neck and threatened him because Ben Shapiro called him sir instead of ma'am. I'm not sure if you've picked up on it yet, but for every one of these trans people, I have not used their preferred pronouns. This is also true when I did my Milo video. I continually referred to Milo as a her, she, female pronouns because Milo is a woman. Even when calling them the opposite sex, I would put quotes around it. I'm pretty sure I did that for all cases, but if I didn't, I meant to. I don't do this out of spite, anger, or hatred for any of these people. I do this out of love for the truth. The second reason to not use their preferred pronouns is that these people have not earned my respect. Instead, they demand it. Use my pronouns or else. How is that any different from demanding that everyone call you His Royal Dudeness Emperor Fizzywinkle of Kakistan? No, I'm not going to do that, you crazy person, you. On the other hand, if this person treated me with respect and earned my respect in return, I may consider using this title. Also, it's kind of fun to say. It's almost as fun as saying, Princess Angelina Contessa Luisa Francesca Banana Fana Bobesca III, but you can call me that. Tee. Yeah, I binge-watched Animaniacs over the weekend. I shouldn't have done that. Now, having said all of that, there is one trans person that has earned my respect, and I make a conscious effort to use her preferred pronouns. That individual is none other than Miss Blair White.
I mean, I think most sane people would agree with me that it's absolutely crazy to take a child's word as the infallible truth that they are transgender and then using that as a valid reason to enable them to enact permanent bodily changes upon themselves, sterilize themselves, and make decisions about the entirety of their life at an age where they can't even drink. They can't drive. They can't vote. They can't legally consent to sex, but you think they can change their sex?
She earned my respect by acknowledging that being trans is not normal. She doesn't demand that people treat her like her lifestyle is ordinary, because it isn't. She was born a boy, but due to a mental condition that she admits is a mental disorder, she chose to go through hormone replacement therapy to change her outer appearance to match a more feminine exterior. The disorder I'm referring to is known as gender dysphoria, and it is extremely rare, or at least it used to be. Recent events have popularized this disorder, and so the amount of cases has increased exponentially, which is odd considering some people cite chromosomal anomalies as a reason for gender dysphoria. Chromosomal anomalies are anything other than an XX or XY pairing of chromosomes. Conditions like this are extremely rare, something on the magnitude of about 1 in 2,000 people, not the 1 in 200 people that most of the LGBT plus community would have you believe. The second thing that Blair White has done to earn my respect is that, unlike other people in the trans community, she is fighting against the social justice warrior movement. While Blair is trans, she does not advocate that other people follow her example. Additionally, she has done her entire transition using only hormone replacement therapy and not surgery, and actually informs other people about the dangers and risks associated with said surgeries. This is admirable, as most on the pro-trans movement downplay the negative side effects of the surgery and the trans lifestyle in general. Blair is also adamantly outspoken against hormone replacement therapy for children. This is in direct contrast to the social justice warriors who encourage prepubescent children to have the hormone replacement therapy before they even know who they are, let alone what sex is, and if they might want to have children in the future. Blair fights against irrationality and gets a lot of criticism, hate, and even death threats in the process. While I don't consider her a woman, I mean, come on, I'm advocating for objective facts here, and she is objectively not a woman. She still has a penis. But I do consider her a much-needed ally in the fight against the insanity that everyone seems to be running towards instead of away from. That leads me to the final point of my video. Through the entire video, I've had this up on my screen. If you can't tell what this is, there's a link in the description below, and it's a list of statistics concerning the trans community. Now, I wasn't able to verify all of the facts on this chart but I didn't find any inconsistencies or any outright lies. The most concerning fact on this and with the trans community in general is the rampant suicide rate. Now, the LGBT plus community narrative is that this rate is so high because of discrimination and oppression. But as Ben Shapiro pointed out, the only comparable suicide rate was amongst Jews in Nazi-occupied territory in World War II. While there are clear cases of hostility against this community, it is unfathomable to think that they have it worse than blacks during slavery in the United States, women under Sharia law, rape victims, or the homeless. The LGBT plus community's narrative is further hurt because despite the media and Hollywood's obsession with placing trans people on a pedestal, suicide rates in this community have gotten worse. I am not a psychologist. I don't claim to be. But I do have a theory about suicide. My theory is that suicide is always the result of hopelessness. Suicide is the loss of the will to keep going because the person does not see things ever getting better than they currently are. With that in mind, it seems readily apparent to me why so many people who have completed the transition, at least in their minds, would have a higher rate of suicide than those pre-op and considering the operation. I think it's very plausible that these people thought that that transition would solve all of their problems, that they would find happiness once they had completed the transition. And they completed the transition and they realized they still had the same problems. Things didn't get better, and in fact, in most cases, they got worse because they had just done irreparable damage to themselves and had a nearly irreversible operation. I think they convinced themselves that once they had completed the operation, that things would be so much better and that all of their problems would be solved. From their perspective, after going through all of that, if that wasn't enough to solve their problem, what in the world could possibly make them happy? With nothing left to hope for, they lost their will to live. I had a really difficult time putting this episode together. I tried to front load it as much as possible with humor and going crazy, changing up my format, but I hope that nothing I have said in this video or in my previous videos is misinterpreted as coming from a place of hatred, as the exact opposite is true. I say the things that I say out of compassion for the people that I fear have been lied to, either by people they surround themselves with or themselves. I know my words will probably fall upon deaf ears, or the ears of those who are already in agreement with most of this. But I hope somehow, someday, someone will see this video and finally see the LGBT and social justice warrior movements for what they are. Lies. And I hope that person will see that truth is an absolute to be sought after and upheld and protected because it is precious. The entire LGBT plus community and the social justice warriors and most of the left reminds me of the age-old adage, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. I'm afraid in the US that so many people were raised thinking that truth is subjective, or maybe they were raised religious and they think God isn't real. I'm not here to preach my religion, but I do know that truth is an absolute, and without that standard to compare other things to, any idea can seem like a valid one compared to the next. And it is often the ideas that are repeated the most frequently or the loudest that win out in a situation like that. This is why I think the left is so eager to shut down any speech that they view as hateful, because they don't think that there is a truth and that the truth will win out. It's because they think whoever talks the loudest and whoever repeats something the most is the idea that wins. And if that idea is hatred and bigotry, then just merely repeating it and saying it loudly enough will cause everyone to follow that ideology. They aren't used to judging ideas based on their usefulness and validity. Without an absolute truth to compare things to, all you're left with is slogans, chants, buzzwords, and talking points. So I tried a couple different voices in this, and I changed up my format. And so hopefully this was a little more entertaining and informative than my previous Death by PowerPoint videos. As usual, I'm going to try to end with a horrible impression. One time Randy Beeman's aunt was sitting on the front porch and she was in her bare feet and she felt a lick on her foot and she thought it was her dog, but it wasn't. It was a crazy guy who did that sometimes. True story. Okay, bye. Once again, too much Animaniacs.